affected by the same rule? Do they have to retire at 70, or is that just appellate judges?
That's a constitutional issue. So at this point, it's 70. There's talk out there that they may consider moving that to 75, but at this point, it's still 70 for all judges.
Well, because sometimes when some of them are hitting their most experience and their ability to work, they're kind of cutting their legs out from under them.
I think people are also surprised that circuit judges don't make as much money as you can make in private practice as a lawyer. They make $145,000 a year, I
I
think.
think it's like 142 or 144
Something like that.
for circuit judges.
In counties, 125, 121.
137.
Oh, it's up and
But
went
I
up
could
then.
be off. I'll tell you, that's another thing to look at when you're looking at judicial candidates. When I left my partnership at Rice and Rose, I already took a significant pay cut to go back to government
Right.
service because I find it to be very fulfilling. At the time, I had a 1-year-old at home. You start thinking about the community and what can I do to help the community more. And I found that I'm happier in this role to try to help the community more and be a bigger impact. That's an important thing to look at for judges. Why are they doing this? Are you doing it because you want to be called a judge? Because it's a very, very serious job with a very, very heavy responsibility, and our good judges are sacrificing a lot because they have to isolate themselves significantly and work very hard and carry that responsibility. So, look at your candidates out there as potential judges, because if they're doing it because they think it's going to be fun or because they like the idea of being called a judge, I'd suggest you maybe look a little further, a little closer at that, because really, it's not about ego. Your ego should be checked at the door when you're making these kind of decisions for people. It's not about who has the more expensive lawyer. It's about what are the facts really before you, and how do you apply the law.
I think one of the things that I find interesting in court is people not understanding some of the principles, like when a defendant doesn't take the stand, he must be guilty.
Right.
But in a lot of high-profile cases, when they didn't take the stand, there was a not guilty verdict. As a judge, or even as a prosecutor, I know from dealing with your husband and seeing some of the high-profile cases he had, where there was one case where it was a death penalty. This guy nearly cut this woman's head off and raped her dead body, for lack of a more discreet way of saying it.
I remember
You remember that case, and that was down here in Edgewater.
I think it was New Smyrna, actually.
New Smyrna, where the night police department was closed and he couldn't get in. And anyway, he was going for the death penalty and it ended up being life in prison. Is that something that a judge has to really consider, that when a jury comes back and it's a death penalty case, that if it's 7 to 5, 10 to 2, I know there's been some adjustments in that.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not a rule where the majority for the jury will bind to the judge in any way. It's a recommendation to the judge, so the judge is still free to sentence as they see appropriate, as he or she sees appropriate.
You've had two state attorneys, John Tanner and Andre Larissa. Were you under those two?
Steve Alexander actually hired me.
Oh, really? So he was
in 1996.
He was the one-term guy between Tanner's two.
Correct. So
Right.
he hired me, and then I worked for John Tanner, who actually promoted me when I was only 4 years in. So I was still a relatively new lawyer. And then I was recruited to Rice and Rose about 7 years in. Stayed there for 7.5 years, and I've been with RJ Larissa about 3.5 years now.
Now, I don't know your opponent, Steve Sands. My understanding is he's pretty much limited to medical malpractice, or some people call them ambulance chases. But with your experience, do you find that the name Foxman helps you in some cases or hurts you when people say, well, she's just running because she's a Foxman?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because you said something earlier about the competition,
Right.
Which I appreciate the question. It's not really competition. My career and many of the things that I've accomplished in my career have nothing to do with my last name. I'm honored to be part of the family. I have the utmost respect for my father-in-law and for my husband, but I'm running on my credentials. My credentials are, I have significant criminal and civil work. I've represented victims in a courtroom, husbands, wives, gotten an award for representing children for free as a guardian ad litem in the court system. I've spent many years trying to focus on the community and do things that are active in the community and try to be responsible and donate my time. So I'm running on my credentials because I do have a varied background with the administrative. Under RJ Larissa, I now supervise over 45 attorneys. I deal with policy issues, budget issues, and I still try cases. I tried a case as recent as March. It was a murder trial.
Right.
So, I bring the variety. I bring the civil and the criminal work. I bring the trial work, and I bring a lot of community service, which I think is also important.
How do you, the last question, and then if there's anybody else who wants to ask a question in the audience, how do you decide which, for lack of a better word, chicken dinner event to go to during this campaign? Is it Palm Coast, is it St. Augustine, Preston City, Palatka, DeLand, Port Orange? How do you balance that all out?